Nobody wants to make a boring video, but that is exactly what happens if you don't have a video strategy.
There is a solution. If you're pumping out boring videos and putting all that time and effort in, never fear. We're going to talk you through a strategy that will mean that you'll never make another boring video again.
So there's 3 parts to this. Anybody can do it. You do not have to have super creative genius to be able to create an unboring video. Is that a word? Unboring?
Yeah.
Unboring is not technically a word, but I'll let it go this time.
Yeah.
So the 3 things are audience. Who are you talking to? Who are they? What do you know about them?
Once you know the all-important audience answers, then you can move on to what messages you're trying to communicate with them. And all important is wrapping those messages up into a story.
And then there's the call to action. What do you want people to do? So we're going to walk you through each of those 3 things and give you some pointers on how to get that strategy really working for you.
The first really important part of the video strategy is all about audience and knowing your audience.
And the reason that it's so important is because, you know, when you're speaking to everyone, you're speaking to no one. And I think a big problem that people often have is that they think, oh, my video, it is for everyone. I don't want to limit myself. I don't want to niche down. And then, I'll be stopping people from wanting to see it. But actually the opposite is true.
Yeah, you have to get really very specific, don't you, about what your audience really cares about as it relates to your topic.
And that's the optimal word, care. What do your audience care about? That's the thing that's going to really help you craft a story that will really speak to them and really engage them. So once you've figured out who your audience are, you can really start thinking about what's your key message, what are you trying to tell them, and how do you wrap that up into a really good story?
Yeah, and I think about it like a triangle. I think about my audience, I think about what they care about, and I think about what messages we're communicating with them. And then you can take all of that and wrap it up into a story. And that's where the what they care about becomes so important, because it informs everything about the way that you craft and structure your story.
And let's just step back to message for a moment. What's the difference between message and storytelling?
Message is really those take-home headlines, that information that you want the audience to retain. It's very important to know what your key messages are, but they're going to have trouble retaining it if you're very didactic and just hammer them with messages. Messages are best retained if they're wrapped up in an interesting story.
So that's why knowing your audience is the really important first step, because once you know what your audience care about, you can create a message that will actually resonate with them, and then you can wrap that up in a really good story. So it's going to interest them, and interesting is the opposite of boring.
Exactly. And once we know what they care about, we know how to start our video, we know how to hook their attention, we know how to tell them a story that's going to relate to something they care about, and we know how to close it out and motivate them to take some kind of useful action at the end, because again, we're talking to something that matters to them.
If the audience doesn't care about the story you're sharing with them, you're going to make a boring video.
Good point. Thanks, voiceover guy.
So the third important part of video strategy is the call to action.
Call to action is literally that. What are you calling out for people to do? What do you want them to do once they've seen your video?
What's the most important part, do you think, of crafting a really effective call to action, or often conclusion to your video, because it comes at the end?
I think you've got to ask people to do one thing. Mm-hmm. I think that's the most critical thing. One thing. What is the most important thing your audience can do that will actually progress whatever it is you're trying to do? Do you need them to like, subscribe, comment, share? All of these things are possible, but only ask them to do one.
Ask them to do one thing because this is what you care about. So you know, at the very start of this video, we talked about finding out what your audience cares about. I think you can supercharge your call to action by talking about the because.
And I've got an example, it's really self-serving. Subscribe to our YouTube channel because it helps us reach more people and stop them making boring videos.
Boring is bad.
So there are 3 really important parts to this video strategy. One is knowing your audience so intimately you really understand what they care about and what makes them tick as it relates to your topic. 2 is taking the key messages you want to share with them, or the headlines, and wrapping those up into an engaging story. And 3 is supercharging your call to action by relating it back to what they care about.
So if you do those 3 things, you will not make a boring video. You're going to make an awesome video. And if you want to know a bit more about messaging, we actually did a whole episode called Master Your Message, and you can find the link to that in the show notes, and that will give you heaps more information on how to actually figure out how to master your message from your video.
Perfect. So check that out, and we look forward to seeing you next time.